this is my opportunity to hopefully have somebody who's watching my video say, you know what, maybe I may try my hand at buying that building up the street from me and seeing what I can do.
What up, though, Black Friday family, and welcome back to another installment of the Black Fridays podcast. I'm excited for this interview today because somebody who I've been following their journey via their YouTube page and then also social media and word of mouth because I heard about them through someone else, Mr. Eddie Carrington. How you doing today, brother?
Good. I appreciate the invite. And what's up, everybody?
So you are the mayor of Flux City, is that correct?
Yeah, so I call myself the mayor of Flux City because as a developer, there are so many different hats you got to wear, and different people you have to basically appease, from your funding partners to the community to your contractors such as your architects and your GCs, politicians, and gaining support from city council, all the way up to the here in Michigan, the state of Michigan, and MEDC and things of that nature. So there's so many different hats you wear and so many different tasks that you have to do and roles you have to play in order to successfully get a development from idea to construction. And so what better way to kind of encompass the role of a developer than to kind of compare it to a mayor.
Dope, very dope. And then could you talk to us a little bit about where the idea of the concept of Flux City and then also the work that you do within because it's a real estate development firm, correct?
So with regard to Flux City, the definition of flux is being in a state of constant change. And, I kind of figured, what better way to, kind of model, my development firm off of a model of, being in a state of constant change, right? Similarly to the city of Detroit, with its continuous evolvement that, we're actively living through. At the end of the day, our main focus is to really do our best at evolving and changing with the communities that we're developing within. And so, the primary focus of what we're trying to accomplish with the development aspect of it all is to, make sure we're developing spaces that can change and evolve with the community as the community that we're building within evolves as well, because no community really stays the same, 5, 10, 15 years down the line, right? We want to make spaces that are able to evolve with, once again, the people that we're building them for.
Nice. And are you commercial exclusively, residential exclusively? Do you do both as far as developments?
Yeah, so I initially started off on the residential side, and I've been in residential real estate for maybe over 15, 16 years. And this is my first development. So just to give you a heads up, I'm currently working on a project on East Warren in Detroit's East English Village. And we purchased an old site that had a bank building on it, and we demoed that bank. And now we're constructing a mixed use facility that has commercial on the first level and 18 units of residential apartments up top. So it's going to be a 3-floor facility, all affordable apartments, are 100% affordability with regard to the offerings of those apartments. And this is an $8.2 million project. And so, going from single family to this type of project is really, really, untypical with regard to, somebody's development journey. I definitely would consider some of it luck, but, at the end of the day, it was basically me getting the community behind the concept that we had for the site, as well as having the community believe that I was able to execute the vision that I was presenting them back in 2020. But a little bit more about my history is when I got into single family real estate, I was working at the bank. I was working at a bank in Detroit off of Grand River and Finkel. And most of the clientele that I would help would be individuals that worked at the big three. And these individuals at that time looked at real estate as their primary source of retirement, not Social Security, not their pension, not their 401k or IRA that they had investments in. They primarily looked at their real estate holdings as their retirement plan. And so, I had customers that had, 2 or 3 homes. I had customers that had 15, 16, up to 20 plus doors. Right. And so seeing these individuals go through the process of, purchasing property, doing a lot of the work themselves and, leasing them out to tenants, ultimately allowing for them to recuperate their investment back, sparked my interest to a point where I gained enough courage to get into the game myself. And, here I am today. But, I point that out just to say that I was exposed to real estate indirectly. I have no real experience when it comes to, or more specifically, professional experience with regard to real estate or development. I was exposed to it indirectly. And similarly, when it comes to commercial development, back in the maybe 2017, 2018, there was the Detroit Homecoming. And the Detroit Homecoming is basically where, I guess, Dan Gilbert hosts a series of events. And, he tries his best at, attracting people who potentially have moved out of the city, an investment that is outside of the city, to basically put money back into the city in different various ways. But I snuck into one of those events. I wasn't invited, but I snuck in and I was able to catch a presentation by a developer by the name of Cliff Brown. And so Cliff Brown, he's a big dog in the game. And so he was at that point developing a project called The Cole on off of Kercheval in West Village. And so, a black dude talked like me. He was doing his presentation with a blazer and some Jordans on, in front of all these individuals that, are, differently cultured, if that's the right way to say it. He was just being himself. And when I saw him, that ultimately got me to that same point where I was at when I was working at the bank and, being exposed to the single family real estate game, which is, if these guys can do it, I can do it too. And so that kind of, really sparked a bit more of a drive for me to move from the single family development and fix and flips and things of that nature to trying my hand at, larger projects.
Mm-hmm. And I have some follow-up questions to that, but I'm going to take a pause in the action to introduce you to my favorite part of Black Fridays, which is Freestyle Fridays. So hopefully you can rap. You got some bars.
I ain't got no bars. I ain't got no bars.
All right, well, good for you. It's you actually don't have to rap. It's just a random assortment of questions. This is like our rapid fire here on Black Friday. So I just ask that you answer each question and you answer honestly.
Okay, what you got for me?
All right. So first, do you remember your very first job?
My very first job was working at Kroger, over there off of Woodward and 13 Mile, that's 13 Mile. And I was, 14 years, 9 months old. And
so you knew to the exact month.
Yeah, in terms of, I guess, when they would allow me to get a job.
Okay, yeah.
Like I couldn't wait to get a job because I wanted to make my own money. I wanted to be able to buy my own shoes and clothes and eventually save up for a car.
What would you say is your favorite Detroit landmark?
Favorite Detroit landmark would have to be, I would say the Belle Isle Bridge. I just like the opportunity to, anytime I ride my bike, I just love to, once again, stand in the middle of that bridge on the west side and just take in, once again, the city of Detroit to your right, Canada to your left, the Detroit River right under you. It's really one of the best views, in my opinion, in the city of Detroit. To really just reset yourself.
And favorite place to travel? Do you have one?
Favorite place to travel as of right now is Toronto. I'm a big fan of Toronto. 4 hours away. You can hop in your car or take a train. Food is great. People are great. Lots of places to visit and things to do to kind of keep you busy. But I'm also not necessarily a person that travels a lot. So I know somebody is listening to this and they're like, Toronto. But, for me, that's my favorite place at this point.
Dope. And I got a one that I want to throw in here for fun and just see what your thought process on it is. In and like around the city, at least in close proximity, we are losing a lot of our malls, or they're just kind of dying out. I would like to know if you had a thought on how you might restructure some of those malls that we currently still have that might be able to get a little bit of life, and then recharge them for how people currently experience malls or properties like that, big, large properties like that.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I mean, we're seeing a really good example of repurposing a mall via what we're seeing over at Northland, right? So Northland, they're tearing down the mall, unfortunately, but it's such a big plot of land that there's so much you can do with the right development plan. So luckily, the developer or team of developers for that site came up with a pretty solid idea to put apartments on the site. They got a Costco over there, and a few other different amenities and stores. But it's unfortunate with a mall, the amount of space within the mall that you can't make money off of if you were to potentially convert it to, let's say, housing. So, all of the hallways, walkways, there's one thing to be able to convert where the stores are into apartments or condos. But with regard to like all of that open space that needs to, basically have service, whether it be, heat, or, you got to pay taxes on it. You got to keep it clean. You got to, run electrical through it. You got to keep the lights on. It's unfortunately really tough to repurpose malls in most areas due to the fact that you can't really, make enough money to in turn cover the debt service that would be needed in order to, convert it into, in my opinion, housing. But and of course you can consider converting it into office space or co-working space, but a mall is a pretty big facility to a point where that really wouldn't make a lot of sense in 2024. So it's a bit, that's one of the bigger challenges as of right now. All of these malls that are starting to go extinct because we're in 2024. Everybody is buying stuff on Amazon and or online. It's just a lot easier and a lot more efficient for us as consumers based off of what options we have to just purchase things online. So I'm rambling a bit, but one of the things that I do see a big opportunity in is office buildings. I do think that office building conversions will be a thing that is going to get more talked about in the next 10 years. It just needs the right type of funding to help back the cost of converting an office building into apartments. We are, I think, roughly, I could be wrong with this number, I think it's 4.7 million doors short of what is needed with regard to the amount of housing that that we need to have in place. And so, with those types of numbers, we have to be creative at creating more housing. And one of the ways, once again, in my opinion, is going to be the conversion of office to housing. So
dope. No, I love that concept. And I think that is definitely some things I'm starting to see in and around the city. Like I was in Royal Oak last night, and they have some developments that's like that. And then other cities that I've been to starting to think more so about that as well. So I think that's definitely a way to go, because I mean, people need housing and more than we think we need. Because I lived on the West Coast for 2 years, and that's very apparent that people need places to stay, and it's not enough to go around, or at least not in the areas that need it. So would love to be able to see some more of those developments happen. But thank you for engaging in Freestyle Fridays. So
absolutely.
Wanted to follow back up on some of the things that you had mentioned before that, in terms of, you had talked about affordability in projects and housing. And I wanted to ask, what does that mean for housing projects to be affordable, quote unquote? Because I've seen in some developments in communities, they're like, we're going to bring in some affordable housing. However, the prices are still match the market or higher than the market somewhat. And then you'll have a couple of units that's affordable, so that you can call it affordable housing, quote unquote. But primarily, it's still a moneymaker. So just wanted to ask if you could break down for us what affordable housing means.
All right. So hopefully some magic happened, and you went from seeing me talking with no phone in my hand to now having an actual device in my right hand here. But with regard to Wayne County, extremely low affordability for one person, or AMI is at $19,900 a year. So if somebody is making a little under $20,000, they call that extremely low affordability. Most times developers don't go that low with regard to their target affordability rate. In some scenarios, developers focus on a 50% AMI goal or higher. So at 50% is considered very low with regard to income. And so that's for one person, $33,150. For two people, $37,900. And for three people, $42,650. However, the highest of the low percentage of AMI, if that makes sense, is at 80%. And so one person making $53,050 a year is what would be considered 80% AMI, which is actually a pretty decent amount of money, right? But if you're one person making $53,000 a year, you would be considered an individual that is a low income renter that could potentially afford an affordable apartment, if that makes sense. If you're at two people, it's $60,600 a year, and three people is at $68,200 a year. Which, once again, that's a pretty decent amount of money. But if you're in that bracket or category, depending on how many people under one roof, you would be considered an affordable or a tenant that can qualify for an affordable unit in that example, 80% AMI. But at the end of the day, there are scenarios where affordability makes sense. And the challenge with affordability is, and development in general, it costs so much to develop these buildings that you need to figure out ways to cover your debt service once you put together the capital stack to allow for you to accomplish the goal of constructing this entity or this building that more than likely is not going to be worth what it's costing to build, right? And so, from a developer standpoint, there's a bit of a dance that you have to do. And, the affordability aspect and incorporating affordable units within your development helps to gain some money to in turn put together a complete capital stack, because some funders do have requirements for you to incorporate a certain percentage of your development to or allocate a certain percentage of your residential units to what we call affordable units. But the challenge is, in order to figure out a way to make your capital stack work and cover your debt service, you might not be able to incorporate anything more than just 20% of your available units as affordable, because the other 80% of those units that you're constructing need to be market rate in order for you to cover your debt service. So, it's a lot less about profit when it comes to the developer and affordability, and it's a lot more about the developer making sure that they can cover their debt service. But, there are a lot of narratives that, kind of get talked about or tossed around that, kind of make it sound like the developer is just being greedy or, not wanting to incorporate affordability for one reason or another. In a lot of cases, it's due to the fact that they need to be able to cover their debt service, not anything, evil or sneaky about it. The building that I'm building now, $8.2 million. The last time we had it appraised was at $3.5 million. So that gives you a really, really good example of just how much support is needed when it comes to building properties, specifically in this market in the city of Detroit. And that comes with challenges. That comes with the need to, be creative with, the rental rates and that also equates out to not, once again, being able to offer as much affordability as somebody would like.
That's a great point, because I wanted to ask, what would you say goes into deciding where a certain, let's say, commercial or residential real estate project goes in, like a city of Detroit or anywhere else? Because very rarely are people just building properties out of the goodness of their hearts. Like, obviously, there's the financial component to it. And then, like you said, there's a lot of math that goes into it to understand as far as affordability, as far as how much we're going to charge for rent, what type of people are going to occupy the space, whether commercial or residential. But as far as deciding on where does that go, how do you evaluate certain areas to identify, okay, we need to work on this type of project over here, over there, and so forth?
It all really starts with an area that has strong community input and organization, such as, a commercial development corporation. East Warren Development Corporation, for an example, is a good example of, an organization that a developer can go to and say, hey, look, what does this area need? Who can I talk to within the community that can give me feedback on, what they don't want to see? Is there a way that you can help me gather the community so I can in turn talk to the community about these ideas, and also see if there's an opportunity for us to even develop within this area due to potential financial offerings as well, right? So one thing that I would like to point out is there are 10 strategic neighborhoods that the city has identified as areas that the city wants to put focus and funding into. And that also helps, right? Because in most cases, when you're developing in Detroit, back to the point of not being able to develop a property that is going to be worth what it costs to develop, we need that gap financing to be able to bring this vision to reality. And so, that also helps when it comes to helping to identify an area to develop within, knowing that this area has some dollars allocated to allow for us to be able to, fill that gap that we know we're going to run into when it comes to building a property within this area. But it's really important to be able to have direct interaction with the community, early on, whether it be a community development corporation, a block club, a neighborhood association. Those are the things that you have to incorporate within your overall strategy early on in order to make sure that your development is successful.
Gotcha. And speaking of developing in certain communities, one of the main things that a lot of people in our community talk about, especially in the city of Detroit, is the aspect of gentrification. And so one quote that I heard a while ago, I can't remember what the video was, but somebody essentially said that gentrification is not bad, colonization is. And so gentrifying a neighborhood, maybe you can, give a definition to it, a more proper definition than I could. But the way I see it is that gentrification is either like moving a community forward with certain beautifications, with developing certain entities that's going to help that community thrive or bring more prominence to that area. And then usually what comes with the gentrification is people who are not of the area or necessarily care about the area. And then that's where the aspect of it is that we are slighted. The people who are from those communities, especially Black people in that aspect. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
I mean, you definitely hit the nail on the head, and I probably don't have a better definition than what you gave. The only thing that I just want to point out is, people that are moving in, from outside of the community, and you made a statement of like, they may not necessarily care about the community as much as the individuals that have already been there for 10, 20, 30 years do. I generally don't see that. I usually see individuals who are coming in from, outside the neighborhood, and, they have their idea as to, how to move the community forward. The challenge is that their new ideas typically clash with the ideas of the individuals that have held down the area for so long that it becomes a bit of a tension between, these two groups within this one area or one community. And the other challenge is the fact that this newer community that comes in and gentrifies the area has a little bit more savviness and a little bit more opportunity to get the ears of individuals that are able to make their ideas move a lot more effectively or efficiently than the individuals that have been in the community and who have been, reaching out to, their city council or reaching out to the mayor and trying to get things done and corrected within their neighborhoods, and feel that, their requests are not being heard, whereas these newer individuals are able to once again push their ideas further along. And so I think there has to be some opportunity to basically allow for the individuals that are within the community to be heard. And I think that their methods that they're used to using are a little outdated, right? And so, just figuring out a way to kind of get them to a point where they have the tools available to take all of their previous concerns and unfortunately resubmit them, on whatever new system or protocol or app that is available, and kind of getting them to a point where they can be heard, I think is very important. And so, from a developer's perspective, gentrification is something that I'm being concerned about as the project that I'm building on East Warren. Individuals are coming to me, and in some scenarios they're like, whoever the developer is, they're white, aren't they? And they're just going to come in. What is this going to be? Is this going to be condos or, so on and so forth? And that gives me an opportunity to educate them and say, no, well, I'm actually the developer. 100% of these apartments are going to be under 80% AMI. And, our primary goal is to obviously fold in the community, which we have done from the very beginning with regard to this overall project, what you want to see on this first level, what you think about the design aspects of it, what color you want to see this build out. And so, just making sure that the community is folded in from the very beginning has kind of helped me avoid any type of concern of the community feeling that way toward this project. But once again, I still run into people that still kind of aren't familiar with me or the development, and so they still have that concern without even double guessing. Well, not double guessing. What's the word? Second guessing. Yeah. So it's once again, it's one of those dances that you just got to do as a developer and do your best at, once again, back again, folding in that community. So I'm rambling a bit, apologetic on that.
No, that's great. And there's a lot of different avenues to real estate overall. And then you are a real estate developer. So I wanted to ask you if you could break down typically what does it mean, or what is the definition of being a real estate developer?
Real estate developer is basically taking land or a building and either developing it or prepping it for development, right? So there are a lot of developers that will purchase land, and they in turn will do some of the groundwork and some of the services. So, if I were to buy a lot in the city of Detroit and I ran the sewer line and the water line from the main, and ran the gas line and the electrical, via DTE, and maybe poured a concrete slab and sold that lot as is, I'd be a developer, right? If I were to purchase a property, or let's use the same example of city parcels. I bought 2 land bank lots, and I combined those lots into one lot, and I in turn converted the zoning. I went through the whole process of converting the zoning from residential to maybe B4, which is kind of residential plus retail. That's a developer. A developer is somebody who buys a property and off the land bank for $1,000, and they go in, they do the complete rehab, and they either sell it or rent it out. To me, that's a developer, right? If you buy a property and all you have to do is just put paint on the wall and change a couple of light plugs or electrical plugs and lights in the ceiling, that's a developer, right? So I mean, like, I think I think it could be as broad as it can be, when it comes to like who could be considered a real estate developer. I don't think you have to go through a process of, constructing a building from, dirt to 3 stories.
And one thing that I've been thinking about myself is commercial real estate, and being able to have a brick and mortar for an idea that I have in the future. And what kind of re-sparked it was I saw that somebody was opened up a space with the idea that I had planned to do like in the future. So I'm like, okay, now how can I be able to start to work backwards in terms of getting that, making that an actual reality? So I wanted to know if you could just talk about how people that are listening or watching, if they're interested in doing like a brick and mortar, because I see in having different conversations with entrepreneurs, business owners, that if you want to go the brick and mortar route, even though we're in this digital age and e-commerce, brick and mortar is still very well alive. It's just the way that you need to do it. Now you need to be more intentional about it. How could you go about getting a commercial space, whether you're renting, whether you want to buy something outright? Do you have any guidance on how people can approach that?
There are definitely opportunities for you as a small business owner to go brick and mortar. And the city of Detroit is really, really a good place to do that at. You just have to have the right concept with the right with the right demand.
From a development standpoint, what would you like to see more of in the city? So a little bit of background why I asked that question. For years, I used to think about why don't we have like a major movie theater in the city, and we got teased by it. If this gets to Big Sean, Magic Johnson, y'all talked about doing a movie theater. I ain't seen it yet, so I just want to put that out there. But that was one of my things that I would like to see. I grew up with the movie theater in my neighborhood that I used to frequent in the '90s, and it was just super dope to be able to have that experience. And I know movie theaters have their own challenges nowadays, but in a perfect world, if you could wave a magic wand and be able to get a wish and see some things in the city, what would you like to see from a development standpoint that it's currently lacking, we need more of, or something brand new that you would like to see from a development standpoint?
And so that question of like Big Sean and Magic Johnson, that theater is on hold officially.
Okay.
So they're not building that, from my understanding. I guess unofficially, but I do think I remember seeing something in the news that stated that they're going to be putting that on pause.
Okay.
And when's the last time you've been to a movie theater?
Oh man,
that answers the question.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Luckily, they didn't open that movie theater because 2024, we're in a scenario where movie theaters are about to be extinct, and so the good thing is for them is they were patient enough with that concept, even though it may have been not their decision to be as patient as they were. Yeah. Luckily, whatever transpired on their end resulted them in avoiding what could have potentially been a pretty bad investment.
But I think it's still potential for movie theaters. But like we talked about earlier, it's a way to do it. And the traditional movie going experience, that's done with. But it's so many different ways you can use and finesse a movie theater. Let people come in, like really, like people do karaoke nights and all that type of stuff. Let people come and do their own movies. Like incorporate some local businesses to come in and do food and stuff. Like you got to make it a thing. I got to get dressed up and go out to and put some effort in.
Absolutely. And I do agree with that. I do think that maybe movie theaters may get a lot more micro than what we're used to. Like a Star Southfield had, 20 different theaters within that one building. I could see a movie theater that only has one. And let's say, every night they have a different theme and a different movie that plays. And instead of it having seats and people looking at the movie theater, maybe they're playing a movie that most people are familiar with. And people can just come in and just, have a good time and actually talk over the movie while it's playing. Right. But back to your point, yes, they are going to have to evolve their concept in a number of ways. But another thing that you asked was, what would I like to see in the city of Detroit? And that's a good question. I'm so stuck on housing right now that I just want to see more housing built. I want to see, I do want to try my hand at converting office space to apartments. I also want to convert schools that, so that's one thing I do want to point out that may not necessarily answer your question, but
I love where you're going, because I was going to add follow up.
Yeah, I think we're going to see in our lifetime, we're going to see in-person school kind of have a bit of a digital revolution, similarly to what we saw in COVID. I think that was a test, but I do think that there's going to be some type of evolution once again with schooling that creates a scenario where you don't see as many schools being built. You don't see as many students in these big, humongous buildings, to a point where, we're going to start seeing more schools close. And so I really think that there is an opportunity for us to convert schools into housing, and that has been done. I think those are cool conversions, and I would like to do one of those. But back to your question, what would I like to see in Detroit? I got it. It's I'm a big fan of small business. I'm also a big fan of Chipotle. I know Chipotle is different, but I would love to see more healthy food options in the city of Detroit.
Facts.
And a lot of us eat Chipotle. Not saying that there are small businesses that offer something very similar or if not better than a Chipotle in the city of Detroit that are ran by us Detroiters. But I do think that, having healthier food options from, these bigger entities, bigger brands would actually help us as Detroiters kind of see eating healthy as a better option than what we currently have, accessible to us. So
I agree. And like thinking about when I moved back, I've been back in the city for 2 going on 3 years now. When I moved back, I moved to Rosedale Park, and just thinking about if you drop a Chipotle anywhere near there, it's doing numbers.
Oh, my goodness.
Doing numbers. They're building one downtown, but like in the neighborhood or close enough to a neighborhood, it's doing numbers all day, any day. Chick-fil-A, they built around the city. They're getting one downtown, but if you go into one of the neighborhoods, it's doing numbers.
Yeah.
Like,
so why do you think that's the case, though? I mean, let me ask you from your point of view.
Yeah.
Why are Chick-fil-A and Chipotle and like all of these brands that, obviously we enjoy. Yeah. Why? This is a 140 square mile city. Mm-hmm. Why are these brands that you and I, find ourselves, partaking in, afraid to come to the city of Detroit? What are your thoughts?
I'm so glad that you asked. I came prepared for this one, actually. I gave some thought to this earlier today. And I think it's 2 things. I think it's number one, the perception of the city. And I don't even know if this is the heaviest of the 2, because there is the other one is from a business aspect. So the perception of the city, we still have issues of blight. We still have issues of, even though, those numbers and those rates have gone down significantly as far as crime, but that's any city. That's literally anywhere. And I'm speaking from somebody who lived in other places. Right. That's any and everywhere. So I think the perception of the city still gets a bad rap in terms of attracting what those type of businesses and where they would like to go, even though I done seen them in some sketchy areas and other places that I've visited. So I think that's number one. I think number 2 is just after going to business school and understanding more a holistic aspect of business, there are decisions that they have to make in terms of like some developments. You have to identify, okay, well, what's the amount of money people that they make, the amount of money that people make per capita in this area, the density, how many people actually live here. And we still have like a lot of like, I'll just for the sake of conversation say like blackout areas or black holes in the sense of Detroit was such a bustling city at a certain point in time. People left and went to other states or went to the suburbs, where the case may be. There's a lot of unused space. And so even though there may be properties in places or look like people live there, not enough, quote unquote, that it would be attractive to a business. But that's certain neighborhoods. Now, in certain ones, like you said, there's 10 neighborhoods that the city identified we want to be able to develop and invest in. That's where those companies should be looking to go, especially. Of course, it might be a more lucrative thing to put them in the suburbs because of the immediate income in those particular areas. And that's something you have to consider as a franchisee or as a corporation of where you're going to put those. Like Starbucks can't just put a Starbucks anywhere for the sake of being Starbucks. Like it has to be, okay, I need X amount of people living here, this type of demographic to make it even worth my while. So you have to pay attention to those things, but those particular neighborhoods, like our keystone neighborhoods that we emphasize in our historical neighborhoods and things like that, that's where we need to be putting those things, or at least positioning or petitioning to get those particular big box retailers or restaurants to go, because that's where the people, those are the neighborhoods that's going to be able to attract the traffic from the other surrounding areas. And they're going to do numbers. Like we said, you drop a Chipotle over there by that Myers on Grand River and 6 Mile, or over there by
game over.
Yeah, it's game over. Or the one on 8 Mile, it's game over. And they got like wing stops and stuff like that. But we typically see that in our neighborhoods, or start to see more of those. But the ones that can really make some noise and help be able to build around, those are the ones that we need. Like you said, like a Home Depot or more Myers or a Chick-fil-A and a Starbucks, like putting those things in particular areas, that's gonna be able to make the attraction that much more greater. Because I always think about, I never forget that moment in time when downtown Detroit started to see that revitalization, and it all started, at least in my mind, I could be wrong. It all started when Quicken Loans, when it was Quicken Loans back then, or Rocket Mortgage, when they decided we leaving Livonia and we going downtown Detroit. And then now you start to see where all this stuff is almost 20 years later. So that's my rant on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect a number of points that you were making. The only thing about it is, you know, it's to me, it's still redlining. It's still a scenario where, of course, they can use those numbers as a reason to say, oh, per capita, or what the average median income in this area is. We're looking for a certain amount of residents in this certain area, and so on and so forth. Or we need a certain amount of traffic that kind of passes by every day. Gratiot, for an example, south of 94, that gets, I think, closer to 20,000 eyeballs a day, right? And so, like, that area is a lot different than a Rosedale Park. When you're looking at kind of the density and those neighborhoods are a little bit more challenged at this current moment, which I also see as an opportunity. There's a lot of vacant land over there. And I do have my eye on that area, but just in general, there are a number of, major thoroughways or streets and highways and things. I'm sorry, like Gratiot, that you can put a Chipotle at, and it would bang. Or there are a number of communities that you can put it, and of course, once again, I'm a big fan of small business. I just think that when you have those larger brands really put the energy and effort into kind of expanding in certain areas, it helps small business even more so, because now they're able to kind of point out to them and say that we've been here for 5 years doing the exact same thing that they're wanting to do, and so now it adds to their narrative, and it adds to their story to potentially even attract more a bigger customer base that is starting to open up to in this example a Chipotle type of offering. But I mean, everything you said was definitely on point. The only thing it's just really hard for me to not call out these brands and say, you're staying out of our communities for a particular reason. We already know that Detroit specifically as a market does have all of those challenges, but I'm wondering what percentage of your clientele that goes to the Chipotle on, let's say there's one between 8 and 9 Mile on Woodward, I think.
What percentage of them come from Detroit?
Exactly.
I'm sure it's pretty high.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what frustrates me, not seeing the amount of investment and energy and focus from these bigger brands to put a store inside of our city, and instead they put a lot more energy bordering the city and figuring out ways to pull our dollar out the city and go, take it to a Ferndale, a Southfield, so on and so forth. But,
well, Eddie, this has been an amazing conversation, man, and I appreciate you pulling up to the podcast. I want people to be able to, real quick before we go, have to talk about the YouTube. So one thing that I love that you've been doing is that you've been documenting your real estate development journeys. You go around the city, you look at different properties, take people along the journey of when you're working on your own projects as well. So if you could talk about the YouTube briefly, and then also make sure that you shout it out, because we want everybody to go and be able to support that channel and the mission as well over there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my goal with my YouTube channel has been to hopefully motivate others that are thinking about getting into the development realm, see what I'm doing and be able to say, hey, look, if Ed can do it, I can do it too. And, to be, as frank as I can be, I'm still going through this process and I'm learning throughout the process. And I'm sharing with you, all of these different experiences, the ups and downs of development, the different challenges that you have. And in real time, you're able to, kind of see the challenges and the wins that I'm able to take advantage of, right? And so that's really the goal, is to, once again, hopefully get people to kind of look at development as something that they are willing to try their hand at as well, right? So back to the example of me being introduced to real estate early on, even if it were indirect, this is my opportunity to hopefully have somebody who's watching my video say, you know what, maybe I may try my hand at buying that building up the street from me and seeing what I can do, right? But yes, Flux, just Google Flux City, Detroit, and you should be able to find our channel. And that really is the place that I'm trying my hand at staying consistent at, sharing all of these different scenarios with you. And yeah, check it out.
Dope. And for the people who want to follow your journey, in addition to the YouTube, where can they reach out to you? How can they get in contact with you if they, may have some more $1 million projects they might want to bring you in on? How can they?
Yeah, just go to flux.city, www.flux.city, and you'll be able to see my Instagram page there, as well as a little bit more about what we're able to do for you and your project on the development realm of it all. And then there's also a place where you can contact me directly, and I'm hoping to hear from you guys.
Perfect. Well, thank you for your time once again. Thanks. And everybody watching and listening, we'll tap in with y'all soon. Peace.